Everyone, CPO here, and yeah, it's me in the Golf R again, doing another video. So you might be aware I did a video a couple of weeks ago upgrading my tune in this 2019 Mark 7.5 Golf R to an EQT Stage 2 tune, and I also went with their off-the-shelf DSG tune for this car, and it really woke things up. I got a lot of questions after that last video. A lot of people said, hey, you know, what's the difference between this? What options did I get? I actually went out and pulled a bunch of logs. So I'm not just going to talk about how I feel. I'm going to show you logs, the difference in how the car responds with a stock tune, and then I'll show you the equilibrium tune drive mode shift points, and then the sport mode shift points, and we'll just look at the data to show you like what the differences are. And I've got some video too as well, so you can see like and hear how that looks. I'm telling you this not because I'm an expert suddenly in equilibrium tuning or any of this, but I'm learning it right now, and I figure it's a good time to share while it's all fresh in my brain what I'm learning about this as I go. So this is for those of you who are looking at potentially moving to a DSG tune and want to understand the drivability differences, how it changes shift points and all that stuff, and then what options you should get. Let's start right now, right here. Just cruising around. I do want to talk about drivability because that's a big thing, right? This is a daily driver for me. So yes, I want to go around, put my foot in it, and spiritedly drive. It's fun. That's why we buy and build these faster cars. The day-to-day drivability is super important to me because this is also my commuter, my grocery getter, my family hauler. This is my only vehicle. So I got to keep it running, and it has to be comfortable to drive. And I will say, with and I'm running the EQT tune right now, the Stage DSG tune, the drivability is actually improved, I think, a little bit over stock. There's some sweet spots, and I'm in drive mode right now. There's some sweet spots where it's sort of in the stock range, like maybe 45 to 50 miles an hour, where you're sort of in that weird in-between stage where it would sort of hunt gears. It might downshift, it might upshift, and you're sort of like back and forth in this area. I notice this tune sort of hangs in there and holds the gear better in just random driving situations. And I know that's probably not saying a lot, but I did notice it. I stay in drive mode when I'm just cruising around, commuting, whatever, when I'm not really trying to do anything spirited. The drive mode is a lot more similar to the sport mode in stock, which if you can make that comparison in your brain. So it is a little bit more fun and spunky, and shifts at higher RPMs. And again, I'll show you that with logs here pretty soon. But when you keep your foot out of it, and I actually put a pedal position monitor, one of the gauges on the access port for throttle pedal position, which technically I guess is called the torque request pedal, because that's really what you're doing, is requesting torque. I've been watching that because particularly when I do the logs for the shift points, I wanted to make sure I had consistent pedal position to make it as clean of a comparison as possible. But I do notice when I'm just driving around like I'm doing right now, I tend to stay, you know, under 30% pedal. Most times, like unless I'm passing somebody, I may bump it up, like that's 50% pedal, and like I have to get off of it quickly because I'm going now faster than I want to go. So 30% and lower, 20 to 30% is pretty much where I stay when I'm just cruising around or commuting. And it's a very nice experience in drive mode. It's very, like I'm in 6th gear going 45 miles an hour at 8% pedal. It's super smooth, super quiet, really easy shifting. So it's a great daily driver mode. If I bump it down to sport, I drop down to 4th gear. I'm 4th gear, 47 miles an hour. I'm at about 15% pedal right now, but it instantly like wakes the thing up. So yeah, I really like the drivability. But so and I'll show you those shift points and the differences. But just know, like, super tame if you keep your foot out of it. Even in sport mode, it's fairly tame if you keep your foot out of it. It's going to hold a higher RPM, which equates to a quicker boost build, which equates to a little bit punchier driving when you do get into it, and it's more readily downshifting in automatic modes. But yeah, just cruising in drive, total like chill ride. It's not too sensitive, it's not too punchy. I really like the balance they found with drivability and performance feel. I'll pull up some logs. We'll pull up the Equilibrium Tuning website to look at the options that you have available to you if you want to select a DSG tune. There are some options that are sort of in the ECU tune, and then there's some options that are in the DSG tune, and they sort of play together. So keep that in mind. That's one of the reasons why I guess everybody recommends that you get the same manufacturer vendor tune for your transmission as you do your engine, because they do sort of operate together. For example, whenever I push down my torque request pedal, I'm not, what this car is doing, the transmission isn't saying, oh, you're at 20% pedal, therefore this is your defined shift point for your pedal position. It doesn't work like that. What it does is that you're requesting a certain amount of torque, and there's a torque table, and your ECU says, hey, I'm looking for X amount of torque at whatever RPM, so it makes those adjustments according to torque requests, not necessarily pedal position. So pedal position is just sort of the thing that we can use to compare how much of our foot is in it. But it's really not that is being called upon for how much power. It's hey, when you have it floored at 100%, you're requesting, so let me do what I need to do to get you that torque, and that might be a downshift and an RPM raise, right? So that's how that works. Anyway, let's go to the office, and we'll talk numbers. All right, so here we are at the desk. I'm going to try and go through this as quickly as possible, but there is a lot of data to look at. So at any time you get bored looking at this, you want to jump around or whatever, feel free. But I know there are people who are interested in the details. But first, what I want to do is go to the Equilibrium Tuning website, and that is right here at eqtuning.com. If you go to store, you can pick by vehicle, which is what I usually do. I just pick VW Audi. It's right up front there. And then you can see your options for both hardware and tunes. So right up front here, the way I did this is I ended up buying my access port from them, getting the DSG communication unlock from them, getting a staged ECU tune and the staged DSG tune all at the same time. Got a bundle package deal, and you can watch for those bundles because that will save you some money. All right, so if you do unlock a DSG tune, you do get an option of whether or not you want auto upshift and kickdown enabled, which is how it is from stock, or disabled. And that's something that only applies when you're in manual mode. So either when you go into manual mode by selecting the paddles and changing gears, or using the gear shift selector to go into manual mode. That's the only time this matters. Overwhelmingly, almost everybody agrees have this disabled. And the reason is it gives you more control. The car isn't trying to automatically upshift when you want to hold a gear like near the top of the power band for an extended period of time. So this does disable that and gives you true manual mode, where it will just hang in a gear all the way to red line. You'll bounce off the rev limiter, and kickdown, basically the kickdown underneath the pedal is disabled. So I did this. Everybody recommends it. I would say just do that. So when you do place your order, you have the ability to, obviously you need to put in your access port serial number if you've already bought one and own it, and DSG TCU ID. So when I ordered mine, I have a OBD11. I just got that information, and you can include that in your order. If you don't include that, and let's say you don't have an access port or anything like that, they'll send you one. Then you've got to get that information, and then you've got to email it back. Then they will create a file for you and email it. So if you just want to shortcut that process, get them that DSG ID up front. So, and if you have any questions about that, let me know. Maybe I can do a separate video on that. There are some customizations, and it gets crazy expensive, DSG tunes. So basic stuff, like if you want to have your own custom launch control RPM, or if you want to change the shift points, if you want to do part throttle shift points or any other customization, the price goes up pretty quickly. Here's one thing to note though, the staged DSG tune. Here's your option for auto upshift, access port, DSG, all that stuff. You do get a chance to put in your turbo. Here's something important to note. If you have a turbo upgrade, your tune, your DSG tune for an IS-20 or an IS-38 isn't good enough. You do need to specify and have basically you're customizing your tune for the hybrid turbo. So keep that in mind. The DSG tune is not one size fits all, and I think that's a common question that people have about that. So then I mentioned there were some things specific to the ECU that often come up in question. I will show you the difference between the COBB launch control and the OE strategy for the EQT tune. I much prefer the consistency of the EQT launch control. COBB launch control is different. It's got that sort of pulsing fuel cut sound that a lot of people actually like. It is adjustable. You can adjust your RPMs for launch. And on the EQT side, you can also adjust your RPMs for launch by using your pedal. Based on pedal percentages, you can adjust how much RPM you want. And I think I'm going to do a whole separate video on launch control just because I could talk about these two different launch controls quite a bit. But just know there is a COBB version of the launch control and there is a EQT version of the launch control. By far, most people seem to agree that the EQT version is a better implementation. So do not select COBB launch control if you want the EQT version. Now, if you select COBB launch control, you can go in and disable it, but you have to do it every time you want to switch. When you turn off the vehicle, it reverts back to whatever's programmed in the tune. Alternatively, you can have it added, but in the disabled state. Gets a little bit more complicated. I'll talk about that maybe in the launch control video if I do that. If you want to see that, let me know. And not exactly specifically DSG related, but COBB adjustable traction control is another question everybody gets. Most people say just leave that off. So I think the overwhelming advice, and I didn't see this ahead of time, is to don't get COBB launch control, don't get COBB adjustable traction control, but do disable auto upshift and kickdown. So that's the advice I have right now. If you know nothing and you don't really want to tinker and play, do that. No COBB stuff, disable auto upshift and kickdown. If you like to tinker and want to play with them and see if there's something for you in the COBB launch control with adjustable RPM, and also you can adjust some of the torque limits, then you might get it, play around with it. Just know that if you decide you don't like it, you've got to pay to have that removed if you want to remove it. And then if you want the same thing with traction control, if you want to play with that, go for it. But if you don't really want to play with it and you just want to go with what's overwhelmingly seems to be the most preferable option, don't get it. All right, so that's the website. Real quick, before we dig into the RPM shift points for the various tunes, I will show you the launch control data. So you can see here, this is 100% pedal for launch control. And this is the COBB version with the fuel cut. This gray bar here is the engine RPMs. This orange is torque, basically cutting in and out. But you can see how much variance you get with RPM with the COBB fuel cut launch control. Here's an example of a full 100% pedal launch with the EQT version. Basically, this is your RPM. It climbs up, and then just you hold a consistent RPM. And even more interesting is boost, which again, I'm going to do a different video on this, but look at the boost build on this. So 100% pedal, and then boost 12, 13, 14, 16, 18, 19, 20. If I hold that launch control, hold the pedal down, I can generate basically whatever level of boost I want up to about 20, 21. And I do have a 2019 Golf R. My understanding is that's different on different vehicles. Contrast that with the COBB launch control. If I just look at boost pressures here, it goes from 8.8 to 13 to 9 to 13 to 8 to 13. So basically, I'm literally going bzz, 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 bzz with boost, and it's not nearly as consistent of a launch opportunity. So that's why I think, and I'm new at this, I'm learning as I go, but that's why I think the EQT version of launch control is way better. So hey, I've been really struggling with how to present this data in a way that's actually useful and perhaps makes sense. So what I ended up doing is sort of stacking together certain modes like stock drive mode and the EQT tuned drive mode, and stock sport mode and EQT tuned sport mode. And I did that with certain throttle positions, so 25% throttle, 50% throttle for those. Then, to be honest with you, when it got to 75% and 100% throttle, I didn't really want to do that on the stock tune, which is basically the factory tune, just because I'm running a stage 2 tune, and I just didn't want to slip those clutches any more than absolutely necessary. I've been beating them up for over a year and a half anyway, so what I decided to do is just go straight to showing you the EQT tune drive versus sport mode, and then the same thing at the 100% throttle, EQT drive versus sport. And then I did do one pull at 100% throttle in the stock tune from third gear, just to show you the third to fourth and then fourth to fifth gear change, so you can see that. You know, this data, it is what it is. You know, there's a lot of variables in here. I tried to use pretty similar paths when I did this, but even the grade of the road is going to change. Intake air temps is going to change things. Like, there's all these variables that come into play, because remember, it's not, you know, 25% throttle equals X RPM gear change. It's 25% throttles equals a request for a certain amount of torque, and then the TCU and the ECU work together to achieve that requested torque value. So lots of variables here. I only did fifth gear gear changes because getting up into sixth gear changes, I just run out of runway, to be honest with you, out on public roads, just driving around. So there's a lot of first to second, second to third, third to fourth, and fourth to fifth gear changes you'll see here. And yeah, some interesting things also I noted is that the gear, the RPMs will continue to rise after gear change. So it kind of looks weird. It's like gear change and then RPMs continue to rise, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And then there's a lot of similarities in some cases with where we end up with gear changes. The tuned always seem to be faster overall in the same period of time, like time for time. You end up 5, 10, 15 miles an hour faster. And then I noticed some differences, for example, where you can see the drivability thing come into play. It's just interesting to see all this stuff play out. Again, I don't claim to be an expert in any of this stuff. I just think it's interesting, and I know people have been asking me specifically for what kind of changes there are. So here you go. This is the data. Maybe you can tell me if you see anything interesting about this, because I'm just learning this as I go. But yeah, here it is. And there you go. That's the data. So if you got any tips or hints or what this means to you, something that that's worth pointing out, please point it out. I'd love to hear what you think of this information. Yeah. And I did get one more question, by the way, while I'm sitting here about DSG farts. That's something that people sort of crave in some regards. The DSG specifically has this fart sound at gear shifts. I had heard people having less DSG fart noise after upgrading the TCU tune, the DSG tune, because people are saying, well, it's shifting faster, so there's less opportunity for farts. Honestly, I don't know if I can tell a difference. I was trying to listen to see, is it quieter or louder? It sounds similar to me, so take that for what it's worth. I hope you enjoyed this, found it useful. If you have any other questions, feel free, let me know. I enjoy doing this stuff. I enjoy learning, so it's sort of a win-win. I learn, I share. That's a hobby for me all in and of itself. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. I love like cruising and then like being in sport mode at a high RPM and then braking and it's like you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.